So we finally know where DeAndre Hopkins is going. A few hours ago, it was reported that Hopkins will be going to the Tennessee Titans on a 2-year, $26 million contract. Now with incentives, it can go upwards to $32 million with incentives, like I said. And then for year one, the base salary is $12 million. And if we quickly move over to the incentive standpoint for receptions, yardage, and touchdowns, he will receive $250,000 for 65 receptions, $500,000 for 75 receptions, $750,000 for 85, and $1 million for 95 receptions. Looking at yardage, $250K for 750 receiving yards, $500,000 for 850, $750,000 for 950 receiving yards, and $1 million for just over 1,000 yards. And the same thing to $250 for 4 touchdowns, $500 for 6, $750 for 8, and then $1 million for 10, which is pretty, I guess in some ways, pretty steep because of just the situation he's in with Tennessee. It's going to be very tough for him to get all of the $1 million for each category. The best chance he's going to get for $1 million is probably the receiving yards. I don't see him getting 95 catches, and I don't see him getting 10 touchdowns. So likely one's going to be the receiving yards at over 1,000, or to 1,050 to be exact. But even then, I kind of have my predictions of what he's gonna get. I don't expect an amazing season from him. And before we get to that, I kind of just want to break down my thoughts on going back to the start. Before Memorial Day, it was announced the Cardinals did release him after failing to find a trade partner. And through the whole process, it was back and forth at first between the Chiefs and Bills. Of course, he talked about how he wanted to play with Josh Allen, Mahomes. He wants to be on a contender. He wants to get a ring. And the obvious two were the Chiefs and Bills. The Bills still being a Super Bowl caliber team, and no doubt, and also with the Chiefs, are just coming off of a Super Bowl win and winning 2 with Mahomes. It seemed like the clear-cut, obvious one for who was going to be the pick. But the Chiefs and Bills at first were kind of going back and forth. They were trying to figure it out. At one point, people were saying it was an arms race between the two, but ultimately, it was just money-wise. There was reports early in the process that he was looking for $23 million a year. Whether it was true or not, I'm not sure. He did come out and say he was looking for a Odell Beckham contract, which, if we do remember, he got $15 million base, and with incentives, it can go up to $18 million. That's what he got with the Baltimore Ravens. And it kind of started quickly fading away with the Chiefs and Bills because of just the problem with the cap situation. There's only so much they can do with moving money around, cutting players, restructuring, and so forth. There's only so much they can do, and even with all that, both teams were still very far apart of what Hopkins wants and what the team wanted. So the Bills and Chiefs were kind of out of the race, and for the most part, you kept hearing about the Titans and Patriots, and it kept going back and forth. Both situations weren't great if you're looking at the perspective of trying to chase a ring, or trying to be in what he described as he wanted to be a stable organization with a stable quarterback and a amazing defense. Tennessee definitely checks the defense part. I think they are a great defense, but outside of that, they don't check the stable quarterback position and the Super Bowl caliber. And the Patriots, same thing too. Great defense, but once again, not sure about the quarterback situation, and also no one expects the Patriots to be a championship contenders. But it seemed like these are the only 2 options lining up because of the more important thing is the money, which I think ultimately he cared more about than being on a championship winning team. If he really cared about that, he definitely would have taken a good pay cut and went to the Chiefs or Bills. But ultimately, he opted to get the money, and I guess who can blame you for the money that he was getting? So now let's look at the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to kind of break it down for the Titans and Hopkins. So no doubt for the Tennessee Titans, it's a big signing. They haven't had a great. Well, I shouldn't say they haven't had a great. They had A.J. Brown a couple years ago. Ultimately, he did get traded, and that's what they got Treylon Burks from, the first-round pick that was traded to them to get A.J. Brown. But they finally get another great wide receiver since that. Don't want to make it sound like it's been a long time since they haven't had one, but they finally get a great receiver back. Though there are concerns with Hopkins, which we will get into a second. I'll get into a second with that. And I'll talk a little bit more for Hopkins' standpoint as well. But regardless, he's still productive. He's still a great wide receiver. So know that this helps the Titans kind of fill that void and help Treylon Burks in the process. And I kind of put a tweet out because I saw someone tweeted something out, true or false, if he'll go over 1,000 yards or 1,100 yards receiving. And I said false. But my opinion was it's more more so on for the success for Hopkins is not on Hopkins himself, it's on Treylon Burks. Can he really step up and improve and be a threat to defenses? Can he take the next step and be that similar mold that they had when coming out of the draft when they compared him to A.J. Brown? Physical receiver, great at yards after the catch. Can he take a next step forward? If he can do that, there's no question Hopkins could get over 1,000 yards receiving. But it's more so heavy on him than anything. But once again, I think also, too, it's great for his development. It takes pressure off of him because even though with age, with injury, and so forth, that's still DeAndre Hopkins. You have to respect him still, and that opens things up for both players. For if Burks can step up and really excel in the second year, that opens up things for DeAndre Hopkins and vice versa. People are automatically going to shift to Hopkins, and that gives Burks the opportunity to really step up and do well. Another play, too, that really helps is Derrick Henry, of course, the best player on this team still. Definitely takes pressure off of him because now people have to respect the wide receiver group. And overall, for Mike Vrabel's career, the only great receiver they really had was A.J. Brown. For the most part, it's been kind of Derrick Henry or bust. He's really been the offense throughout the whole process since Vrabel has been there, and then basically since he emerged back in 2018. So no doubt it really helps him out there. It takes less pressure off of him, and teams not looking at Tennessee just solely on a run-heavy offense. Now they have to respect the boundaries with Burks and Hopkins as well. So no doubt I do think it's a great signing. Does this put them over top at to be Super Bowl caliber teams? Absolutely not. And I still question even if they can even be a playoff team because it's going to be tough to see with some of the players up there in age. With Tannehill, of course he had injury problems last year. I do expect him to bounce back, but we don't know how he's going to be. And also with Derrick Henry at age 30, I expect him to be just as fine. Like how he's always been, just as dominant, but you still have to aid for caution for that with age 30 for running backs. Is he going to start to wear down a little bit, especially with the volume he's had over the last few years? Is that injury bug really going to kind of creep up on him? Last year he was really good. Back in 2021 he had that foot injury, which was the first big injury he's had in his career. But once again, at age 30, you kind of want to aid in the side of caution for a 30-year-old running back. And once again, too, for Hopkins with his injury problems, if you kind of look at the stat-wise, overall for production-wise, he's done pretty well. But the thing is, too, is the games missed. Not horrible, but it is a concern. Each of the 3 years he spent with Arizona, he has missed more and more time. So in 2020, he played a full season, which is great. Out of 16 games, which is before they added the one extra game. So he did play a full season in 2020 and excelled over 1,400 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns. This is where the injury concerns start to pile up. In 2021, of course, he had the season-ending injury. He only played 10 games, missed 7. In that stretch, he had 572 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. Next move to last year, which missed even more time, not much further from last year or the year before, but he missed 9 games. This was due because of a suspension, but even in the 9 games, he was still phenomenal. 717 yards and 3 touchdowns. But you're starting to see, whether it's injury or suspension, the games missed start to really pile up. So in the 3 years with the Cardinals, out of 50 total games he can play, he played 35, which is 70%, and missed 15. Again, not horrible, but especially with his age at 31 entering the season, and you're starting to see each year he's starting to miss some time, especially the last 2 years. It definitely is a concern for the Chiefs, or not the Chiefs, the Titans. But even regardless of that, it just felt like the Tennessee Titans had to do something because they just didn't really have any options outside of Burks and Derrick Henry, of course, but just look at the skill positions for wide receiver and tight end. Not too much of a threat out of Burks. So I just feel like they were kind of desperate and they had to do something. They had to give Tannehill another weapon to maybe try, kind of run this thing one more time before it really falls apart after this. Because also there's a good chance too that Hopkins might not be here after the season because of just the way things are going to be. I mean, Henry is in his final year of his contract. Tannehill is in his final year of his contract. Is this something that Hopkins wants to be part of? Or ultimately, for the Tennessee side, are they going to decide after this year, a clean slate, we have to rebuild, we have to start over again because Tannehill is at age 34, Henry's at 30, Hopkins is at 31. It is an aging offense overall, so there is question marks on that. And looking for Hopkins' standpoint, I don't like this move. He chose money over championships, which again, at his age, getting that money, who can blame him? But overall, I just don't like the situation. For me, to put out, kind of give my thoughts on his season, I don't think, if you want to say a hot take or, bold prediction, I don't see him going over 1,000 yards receiving. I'm sorry. I just don't like the quarterback. Tannehill is a good quarterback, but definitely not a good enough quarterback to really help elevate him as opposed to Mahomes and Allen, which he would excel immensely if he was part of those two teams. So definitely a huge drop-off when he talks about stable quarterbacks to the Tennessee situation where you have Tannehill, and then entering the second year, if he's still on the team, you have potentially Will Levis or Malik Willis. Well, Malik Willis might get cut this season, so it looks like Will Levis might be the guy next year, which essentially even though he'll be in his second year, technically will be a rookie because I don't see him playing games this year unless we have the problem with Tannehill getting hurt again or the team just starts on has a horrible start for the season, and they put Will Levis in to begin with. But regardless, this looks like Tannehill will be his final year in Tennessee, and then moving forward for next year, it'll probably be Will Levis. So the quarterback situation isn't great right now. With Tannehill, it's average, above average at best, and then for Will Levis, you're getting a young rookie quarterback with it's definitely a raw talent, so you don't know what's going to happen with that. So definitely the situation for quarterback wise in terms of stable success for that is poor at best. The only bright spot is Derrick Henry, but once again, he's on a contract for one more year for this season, and after that, I do expect Tennessee to move off of him because they got Tajay Spears, who also could play a role for this upcoming season too. Definitely a great pickup in the draft. But I can no doubt see him taking over that role once Henry leaves, if they do so. Like I said, I do expect them to move off of Henry because of just age and just money wise and going for a cheaper option. They do have Haskins, the Michigan player from the year before, but with the off the field problem, I don't know if he's gonna make the roster. I'm surprised he's still on the team regardless of the things he was accused of not too long ago, a couple weeks ago. Or a few weeks ago, so I'm surprised he's still on the roster. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets cut for this offseason, but he's still on the team, so maybe he can also be a pairing up with Spears. But overall, I do expect Spears to maybe be the starter next year, at least the feature back. And once again, for wide receiver, you do have first round talent Burks, who did have a good season last year. Once again, the quarterback position was so inconsistent last year, you can't really put too much on Burks. And also you have Westbrook as well as a decent receiver, but once again, nothing too crazy at the skill position for wide receiver and tight end. And then for tight end, you have Okonkwo, if I said that right. Did play well towards the end, but once again, overall, nothing too spectacular. So for looking at Hopkins' standpoint, if we're taking the money away, which he got the money he was looking for, even though it was a tad bit under what he said for for Odell Beckham, overall, he still got the money that people were maybe surprised that he got for 2 years, $26 million. Has a potential increase up to $32 million with incentives and so forth. But if we're looking for success-wise, I just don't see him excelling there. Of course, we had people around the league kind of criticize. I see people tweeting out that people around the league kind of criticize Hopkins for picking the tight end, saying it was a horrible spot to pick. They say this is a place where wide receivers go to die. Of course, we had Randy Moss in 2010, Andre Johnson in 2016, if I have that right. You had Julio Jones in 2021, and now we have DeAndre Hopkins this year in 2023. Though I do believe Hopkins is in a better situation in his career and production as opposed to Julio Jones, who was really having much more injury problems at that point than Hopkins. But it's definitely a tough situation because, again, especially for the last few years, it's been really run heavy oriented. Not too much on wide receiver, even though they did have A.J. Brown. It just more focused on Derrick Henry, and I kind of worry from a production standpoint, it's really going to cut into Hopkins' production, and also too with Burks. And I said too, it could make or break Hopkins as well, depending on how Burks does. But if he excels, there's also the double-edged sword. It could help him, but also at the same time too, it could hurt him and take, of course, targets and receptions away from him as well as once again, even on top of that too, is the quarterback situation with Tannehill. Tannehill has done good enough, but it's not what they're looking for with, of course, drafting Malik Willis last year and then trading up for Will Levis this year. Clearly, they don't believe in Tannehill to be the future, and they want to move off of him, so the quarterback position isn't that spectacular. And I kind of get my thoughts on his season. I might be a little bit generous. Who knows? I could be way too harsh on him, but again, I just don't like the situation he's in. Not saying the Patriots' spot is much better with Mac Jones and the receiving core they have there as well, but similar situation. Great defense, which is the only thing going for them is Vrabel has always had great defenses, play well, they play physical, they play tough. So no doubt that side of the ball I'm not too worried about. It's just the offense. Same thing with the Patriots. I know the Patriots will play great defense, but it's the offensive side that I'm worried about, especially the quarterback position with talks about Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones, what's going to happen there, him trying to get rid of Mac Jones in the offseason with trades. So both sides aren't too spectacular from it. It just came down to really, I think, just money that the teams are willing to offer. I don't think Belichick was going to give him the money that Hopkins was looking for. But to get to my predictions for a season, it's not going to be horrible, but it's as low to some people as what they're expecting. I have him going for 75 catches for 950 yards and 7 touchdowns. Once again, I might be, in your opinion, being too high on him, being too low. I just don't see a 1,000-yard season for Hopkins, just with the situation with the skill group outside of him, and then with the quarterback position as well with Tannehill or Will Levis, depending on how things go. I just don't like it. It's not a horrible situation, but it's not the best one either. So for the Hopkins side, I don't think it was the best option. Obviously, the better ones would have been clearly Chiefs and Bills or another playoff contending team or championship contending team. But once again, it just more so just came down to what we all expected from the beginning is money. He was just more so looking for the money, and Tennessee was willing to offer that. What I keep saying over and over again, who can blame them? But I'm going to kind of wrap up my thoughts on here. Once again, DeAndre Hopkins has signed a 2-year, $26 million deal with the Tennessee Titans. Maybe a big shock to some, but it just seemed like more and more it was going to be that because there wasn't too many options to begin with, really. After the first start with the Chiefs and Bills, it really just came down to the Titans and Patriots. But let me know your thoughts down below on the contract. Do you think it was a good signing for the Titans, and do you think it was a good pick for DeAndre Hopkins to go there? Let me know down below. But with that being said, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.